Oregon's weird to begin with, but we're just going to delve into how much weirder it's trying to be. Gabriella Hoffman is here, policy analyst with CFACT, about a ballot initiative I've discussed with one other person, but this is a longer interview and we're going to dig in. Good morning, Gabriella.
Good morning. Happy to discuss this with you. It's super crazy, and it will have wide-sweeping implications across the country if this passes.
Try to imagine a place where this goes into effect. Let's tell them what it is, because it's crazy. It affects everything. The only thing they're going to have left is concrete and trees.
That really is the case. When you look at Oregon's history, it was traversed by Lewis and Clark, settled by fur bearers, farmers, and, rugged individualism would not exist. Oregon wouldn't exist without rugged individualism. And let's say their forebears look down on Oregon now.
Yeah.
And they'd be embarrassed, especially with what's happening in Portland. So this is Initiative Petition 28. And as of us talking, it has received over the threshold of signatures needed to qualify on the ballot. It has another few weeks, and they're going to be sifting through whether or not those signatures are legitimate, but they have enough to be on the ballot, which is very scary. And the proposal sounds very innocent when you look at its claims. It's going to stop animal cruelty and forbid certain practices, change the criminal code of the state. When you look deeper into what it's proposing, they have a website dedicated to Yes on IP28. It is the worst nightmare you could think of. It says that it would outlaw farming, it would outlaw fishing, it would outlaw hunting.
Trapping. You wouldn't even be able to have a dog.
Exactly. Veterinary services, those would be criminalized. You can't do management of any kind.
You can't artificially inseminate a cow.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole lot of nonsense. And if Oregonians are not very careful, this could slip under the radar. And if they vote yes, this would be extremely hard to get rid of. And I look to recent history with Oregon, where they passed a gun control measure very narrowly, and they're fighting it in the courts, and they can't get rid of it because now they see that it's actually a huge restriction to your Second Amendment rights. They passed a purchase-to-permit regime, which makes it impossible to buy certain types of firearms, and then they also restricted the type of magazine you can own. And then now you have this, but you have to look at kind of nearby states. Colorado has experimented with this with forced wolf reintroduction. They can't reverse that, and they have had far more wolf mortality with this ballot box biology measure than they would have had, they allowed for a highly regulated hunt or some sort of culling effort. So more wolves have died at the behest of animal rights activists than it would have with hunters, conservationists, wildlife managers, and the like. So you look at examples of where this has been playing out in blue states all across the country, it leads to disaster. This would be the most extreme measure I've seen ever taken in my decade of reporting on this. But this is par for the course for Portlandia.
Well, but you got to think about it. The first raiders would have moved, for one thing, if this were how it was there. But they are going to the point where it says a lot more than people think. Like here in Missouri, people passed a measure on abortion just because they saw the word abortion. They went for it because that's what they want. Those people, not normal people. All right. So these people are going to see the words end animal cruelty, and they're going to vote for it, and they're not going to understand the repercussions of what they've just done.
Correct, because there are efforts, let's say, I've seen Republicans argue they don't want any more mistreatment of beagles, and that's a reasonable ask.
Beagles?
That's fine.
Who's hurting beagles?
You've seen, the animal testing on beagles, right, in the past. So some people might conflate it with that and say, okay, we want to end that, which is reasonable.
Sure.
There could be other ways to do testing for medicine and the like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've seen Republicans oppose that, which is great, and I don't disagree with that. But you could see even some people on the right maybe saying, I support, animal welfare. This seems great. So this might even confuse center-right people or conservative people or people in the middle, people in the middle who agree with stopping animal cruelty, but then they don't read the expansion of what they would deem animal cruelty to be, which is totally cruel and unusual. And it's what's bonkers to me is that the people that they're targeting, claiming that are engaging in animal cruelty, are probably the most charitable and nicest to animals. Farmers and ranchers, they care very deeply about their livestock. I've never met a rancher or farmer who doesn't care.
It's money. It's their livelihood. It's what they do. And what are they going to do when that's such a big part of their economy? These idiots don't understand that it's a huge part of their economy. And
right.
if you can't farm in Oregon anymore, what are you supposed to do with your land? A ranch,
well, they
I guess.
want to convert it to solar panels, perhaps. Maybe engage in eminent domain.
Of course.
That's hypothetical, but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at also the wildlife agency in Oregon. Millions of dollars would be gone. They admit that, we're going to be tampering with conservation efforts. There won't be funding for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Almost $200 million thrown out the window. Millions of dollars annually from the Department of Interior goes for bolstering habitats, wildlife, and the like, hunters' education, revamping public infrastructure for hunting and fishing. So that money would go out the window, affecting manifold amount of people. Like almost 1 million people would be affected, so they can't enjoy going to the outdoors because they would be engaging in so-called animal cruelty, which is ridiculous, which is what Oregon law exactly does right now. It makes an exception saying, like, those practices, animal husbandry, hunting, fishing, are not animal cruelty. So you have it in the books now, those protections. But you don't have to be a lawyer to see that what they would do to upend the criminal code for so-called animal cruelty would now encompass, criminalizing the very practices where it is pretty humane. Hunters and anglers are very cautious about not engaging in animal cruelty, and if you do, you have a slap on the wrist and you get penalized for doing that. Same with farmers and ranchers. But if this extends to pet owners, that's why you see the American Kennel Club opposed to this. They would be affected. You probably wouldn't be able to get a pure breed dog, a brood. They would say that's cruel and unusual to breed purebred dogs.
I have 2 of them.
Yeah, so that would be totally illegal because they would say it's abuse. It's totally abnormal.
Well, Gabriella, so let's get a group of them together. And let's put little backpacks on them with their granola bars and their wheat juice or whatever they drink, and let's walk them through the forest and just sick the bears loose and see if they believe in stopping the bears at that point. Or are we all going to be Flower from the show Ghost? I mean, what are we going to do? Are we all are we just going to allow animals to get diseases and deteriorate by not allowing people to hunt deer? Are we just going to let the population surge so that they all start getting sick and starve to death and die, and they're just laying everywhere, smelling up the forest? I mean, these people have no clue what they're voting on.
This is a point to the greater, I would say, disturbance of rewilding. I'm not sure if your listeners are familiar, but these people want to return the United States into, some of them, especially those who are anti-hunters, to total wilderness, pre-human settlement, which you can never achieve with humans on the landscape. And it's counterintuitive to do that, of course, as well. So they would be fine with disease, human-wildlife collisions with cars. They don't care. That's simply what they are willing to take that risk because they say that what they're doing is humane to animals. It respects them. It allows them to do this. But it is cruel. Like, how could you do that? And even if you're managing animals, let's say in hunting and fishing, you're not hunting things to extirpation anymore. We have rules. We have guidelines. We have highly regulated hunts in seasons where you can't get away with, eliminating large quantities of animals because
there are limits. Exactly. You have to get a tag.
Exactly. So do you want one extreme versus another? So they're really playing with nature, and when you play with nature, there are a lot of negative consequences with that. Yeah. I would like to think that this doesn't pass, but the pessimist in me says, well, Oregon has bent over backwards for certain extreme measures, and they narrowly pass. But I think because you have so many different industries impacted by this potentially, that maybe for some reason that they narrowly stave off this. But never say never in a place like Oregon, and other states will look and watch and say, okay, if they succeeded in Oregon, we can try this in our state. What's to stop us from doing this? So it really is something to pay attention to. It's kooky, it's wacky, but they have succeeded narrowly in passing stuff. Like I said, Colorado, wolf reintroduction. Sounds great on principle. It's a disaster 6 years after being implemented into law.
Their summer of love proved to us how smart they are. They also believe in abortion. So killing humans, they're perfectly cool with that, but don't put your dog on a leash because he might pull on it and hurt himself. But I only have 2 minutes left, so when are we going to find out if this goes on the ballot when?
They have to have acquired the signatures by July 2nd.
Okay.
Or July 3rd, about 4 months before the general election in November. And then the Oregon, I believe, Secretary of State, or that equivalent of who oversees, ballot initiatives, will have to review make sure that all those signatures are legitimate, there's no duplicative signatures, and then they'll assess whether or not and determine whether or not it proceeds and makes the ballot. But so far they've claimed they've exceeded the threshold quite a bit, but it remains to be seen if, again, all those signatures are legitimate. Who are they even asking to sign on to this? Because I don't even think, with how much they're losing population, it's amazing that they're able to find so many people in support of this, or maybe they found gullible people who like pets or care about animal welfare, and animal welfare.
They probably just put it in front of them and said this is an end to Animal Cruelty Act. It's that simple. We don't have much more time, so I have to interrupt. I'm sorry. But if this passes, I mean, you're not even going to be able to have your pet put down when it's sick. You're just going to have to let it suffer and die, because it'll be illegal to have veterinary action. Where do people go to learn more about this, Gabriella?
Well, there are various different groups at CFACT. I have a podcast and a whole write-up about this, so you can go to our website, check it out there. There's a group called Oregon Hunters Association that is fighting this directly. I would recommend listeners from outside of Oregon to go look there. I mean, it's a Missouri audience, but a Missouri audience can care about what happens, of course, in Oregon.
We care.
Support the groups there that are fighting this. There are different hunting, angling organizations that are opposing this as well. International Order of T. Roosevelt, a lot of national groups. So look to see who is fighting this. The American Kennel Club is opposed to this. So
gotta hurry, Gabriella.
So that's what I recommend.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.